people were still enjoying holiday time with their families and everything like that. I do know that we have people from all over the United States. We actually have some people in the UK. One of them is probably everybody's, I would say almost anybody on here is, they're some of my favorite people, but one individual specifically, Jill out in the UK, we really appreciate you. We love you. We miss you. We hope to see you soon. Um, but the call will be recorded, so other people have an opportunity to be able to go back to it. Anybody that is going through this will always have access to this video call and also any of the information. That's really important to us because, as some of you are salon owners, this is a great reference thing, not only for you to go back to, but your stylist to go back to, but for people that you hire on in the future to be able to use this as an onboarding tool. Ashley said something really cool right before this. We really want this not to be a one or done thing. So it's really important for us, for you guys to have the access to it, because we believe that the best thing you can actually do with tools like this is to gain mastery on these types of things that we'll go over today. Any questions that anybody has, please put them in the chat. We'll go through this whole format, this whole call, and then we'll actually get into any of the questions that you put into the chat, and we'll actually answer those questions at the end. Of the many things that I love about what Ashley and I have created with Fuse Republic and the way that we work and the way that we work with salons, we truly believe that there is a beauty in simplicity. And at one point, somebody told me this, and it has resonated with me ever since they told me this, was that people do not resist concepts. People actually resist confusion. So when you look at any type of system that you're trying to put into place or any type of compensation program, anything that you're actually doing, even whenever you're just saying anything to a child or to any of your children, if you cannot put it in its simplest form, what ends up happening is that if the messaging becomes too confusing to where somebody cannot understand it, retain it, and then be able to say it back to you clearly, there's confusion there. And I think a lot of times what ends up happening is we start thinking that people become resistant to things when in all reality they're just confused by things. Um, and when you become confused by things, a lot of times, not a lot of times, the majority of times people just give up. And what we are wanting to accomplish and what we're always trying to accomplish is always putting everything into its simplest form so we can see people progress and get as much production as quickly as possible. Ashley, I know that you're recording this. You're probably going to hit me at the end of this, but somebody is wanting to get into the class. Becca is wanting to get into the class, and she's not able to do it. Um, so, and remember, anything that we go through today, remember, all this is a broad example. We can help go deeper on different structures, different compensation models, things that you guys have going on that are specific to your salon. Um, all salons are more the same than they are different, but we also do know that salons do have they run on different compensation models, they run in different pricing, and they do other things, and we can always go back and answer any of those questions that are more unique to your specific salon. So let's get this thing started. The whole thing is based on where is the money, and this is something that I always love to try to work with any salons throughout the year. um, and it really becomes more apparent whenever we go into those slower times, whenever people want to have these conversations, when this material is great for those slower times. Whenever you look at your Januaries, you look at your Junes, you look at your July. Um, and I'm sorry, I keep getting blown up because people cannot get in on this call. Give me 1 second. Um, However, I do believe that you should always be searching for where the money is in your business at any given time. And I think because of, I don't know if people get bored with just the more simple part of the work, but we believe that the more simple part of the work, that's where actually all the money sits. And we say this all the time, some of this information, it's not sexy, and there's nothing sexy about hard work. Everybody wants to do like the Instagram stuff, and I'm not downing that stuff by any means and showing off their work, or that's how they're going to get clientele. However, whenever you can look at the non-sexy things about what you need to do to actually be able to make money and the non-sexy things about work, that's usually where all of the opportunity sits. So as we go through this, I want you guys to keep in mind that these are basic fundamental practices that everybody can benefit from. And that whenever I've had opportunities to sit down with salons and or stylists, we've really been able to dig deep just off of these simple processes and systems. So we're going to start this thing out. And for some reason, now my screen is not working. Oh my gosh. Okay, now it's working. Technical difficulties are always the best. Whenever I was doing a little bit of research, I know like what a lot of the statistics say from the Professional Beauty Association, the PBA, and different metric companies that are actually in here, that are in our industry. But I wanted to get a lot of I wanted to get some of this information just off of what the public thinks about us, or what Google AI or what the metaverse actually thinks about us. And whenever I got into Google and I went into Google AI, I asked it, what is the average cut and color for our industry? And it said that the average cut or color is anywhere from $100 to $250. Then I went into Meta. I asked it the same thing, and they were right around, a little bit different, but still right around the same ballpark. And it was saying about $142 to $298. So any of this math that we're actually going to be doing to get into this is actually going to be based off of averages of how the public sees us. And I know that a lot of other people are going to have different pricing systems and stuff like that in here, but this is actually all being calculated off of averages. So the first thing that I've always gone into first is frequency. And I don't think that our industry really looks at frequency as much as what it should. So being an outsider insider, being an outsider of somebody who does not do hair, who's not behind the chair, but somebody who works in the salon industry constantly and who works on different systems, structures, compensation programs, associate programs, things that are happening in the salon. The main thing that I always went back to is frequency. So even at Fuse, because we are a distributor, we try to get people on an ordering process as much as possible, because that is the most cohesive thing, not only for them, but it's the cohesive thing for us as a business. And when you're looking at how you set somebody up on scheduling and systems on how they order, or in a salon on how they come in and how often they come in, it's one of the most important things to be looking at as a hairstylist. And the industry standards have always taught us to rebook every 6 to 8 weeks. Having these conversations with salons in the past, there's been so much, I would say about 95% of whenever I've asked a salon owner about how their team reschedules, or a hairstylist about how they reschedule their people, it's almost always on an average, 90% of them are saying that, the average is going to be about 6 to 8 weeks. So whenever I started thinking about that, and it was probably about 10 years ago, I really started diving in deep, because if you go into the psychology of a hairstylist, the thing that they always want to say is, I want our people to be able to feel beautiful whenever they come into the salon. However, I want them to be able to keep that feeling until the next time that I see them. And it's always been really interesting to me is that if that is the philosophy and that is the mantra of how that hairstylist lives and how they want that client to have for their own lifestyle outside of the salon, it is so important to me that I would want to be able to see them as much as possible. Because if the goal is for the client to keep their hair and how they feel the same as the day as they leave the salon, to rebook every 6 to 8 weeks, it's just, to me, that's wrong. Obviously, it's my opinion. I'm going to be biased on my opinion, but I wanted to share that opinion with you. But I also wanted to share the opinion with you when it is attached to math. Now, we know that the goal for the client and that the best thing for the client is to keep their hair, which is actually your best marketing tool, always, is how your client looks outside of that salon, how that color looks outside of that salon. If they can recreate that look because you taught them and educated them to be able to recreate the look with the tools that you actually use. So when they're at the supermarket or when they're at a holiday party and somebody goes to compliment that hair, that they are always talking about you and them feeling the same way that they are at the salon. You cannot bottle that up 100%. But the ultimate goal is to be able to make sure that we can feel that same way as much as possible while they are away from us. So, empowering your clients is empowering confidence. And when someone is empowered by you, they become extremely, extremely loyal to you. I believe this to be fact. Hair starts growing out the second they walk out the door. Not only does their hair color start growing out while they're paying for that color service that they just received, but so is their haircut. And it is super important that if they choose to prolong that, or if we actually prolong that for them, and if we prolong that frequency, it's not a space to work from ethically as a professional hairstylist. If what we are doing is for them and it's actually for them, for their confidence, for their self-esteem, for their lifestyle, and to keep them looking their best, it is imperative that we actually see them at the appropriate frequency. So to go from 6 to 8 weeks to every 5 weeks is actually the magical spot. When we see a client once every 6 to 8 weeks, we only see those clients 6.5 to 8.5 times a year. When we move that client up just one more week, up to 5 weeks, we see them 10 times a year. Now, when we start doing the math on this, and if you even took out your existing clientele, if you're seeing them once every 6 to 8 weeks, you take that total service dollar amount at the end of the year, right? Or you take that total service dollar amount in that 6 week time period and you multiply that by the six, or I'm sorry, by 8.5 times a year, you will get the number. But if you would multiply that obviously by 10 times a year, that number is significant. So not only is the guest beyond taken care of, but the designer sees a significant promotion in their service and retail dollars. So the simple beauty of math, what makes a client count so important? Do you have a full book? I learned this probably about my third year in when somebody actually taught me the accurate number in a 5 week rotation, what the accurate number was to be considered a full book. And it's always been really interesting to me when I've had conversations with hairstylists in the past, and they say, "Hey, I'm booked full," and I'll always say, "Okay, well, how many clients do you have in a 5 week rotation?" Anytime I've ever asked that, how many do you have, and how many weeks are you set on the service rotation? Every single person, I would say probably 97 to 98% of those hairstyles, they struggle to actually give me that data. And it's wild to me because I've even had conversations with people who've been doing hair for 15 years, and they would say that they're full. And I would say, okay, how many people does it take to have a full book? And they could never accurately give me the number. And it was never at any fault of theirs. Nobody had ever told them actually what that number was. So cosmetology schools, I won't get too much on this kick, but cosmetology schools don't really go in depth about actually anything that makes a hairstyle successful behind the chair. They do more sanitation things. Um, they really don't give you any type of in salon experience, but they definitely don't give you the business experience of what you need to be able to go out. So again, it's so interesting that schools have never taught anybody actually what it takes to be successful or what the full client count is to be booked behind the chair. So I'm going back a few years, but I still use this as my standard benchmark, this number. But today we can also get creative with it and play with the numbers of where it sits in how it looks in today's world. But whenever I was taught, they say that it takes 256 clients to have a full book. Again, that's going back a few years when less services were available and pricing was different. So the important thing about the full book of 256 clients is that it's in a 5 week rotation. Now, if somebody was going to be working or a designer was going to be behind the chair and working 40 hours per week, that 256 would mean that those 256 would be in 45-minute appointments over 5 days. If a designer was behind the chair working 36 hours per week, that would be 240 clients at 45-minute appointments working 4 days. 27 hours per week, that's 180 clients at 45-minute appointment blocks over 3 days. And then if somebody's working 18 hours per week, that is 120 clients at 45-minute appointments over those 2 days. Oh my gosh, this thing keeps freezing up on me. Sorry, everybody. So it's important to know at least where the standard is to know what the number is for us to achieve or what that number is for us to strive for. Current industry messaging always says work smarter, not harder. That quote and that saying is one of my biggest challenges in this industry, or really just any industry overall. When people say work smarter, not harder, it is a great saying. However, I do believe that if you actually apply working hard and working smart together at the same time, that how you accelerate or your productivity and your performance and what your financial outcome looks completely different. Because if somebody's going to try to outsmart me but not outwork me, if I work smart and I work hard, I'm actually probably going to end up beating that person. And what we sit in today is actually really interesting in the industries because obviously with all the lived-in hairstylists and all the lived-in hair that hairstylists are doing, and this is just based off of numbers that Ashley and I have went out and asked um, the average lived-in hairstylist. On average, most of those lived-in hairstylists work 3 days per week. And whenever you do the math on that, that's actually 3 hours per client. That's a $250 average ticket over 48 weeks in a year times 3 days times those three clients per day. That is 432 appointments for the year. And that is a $108,000 maximum in service sales. So that's 108 total clients. And then you're also putting a salary cap on yourself. So you actually have to work more to actually make more. And there's so many of these sayings that are out there that just sound good when people have a response to give somebody something, hey, work smarter, not harder. But a lot of the things that they are saying is you're actually having to work more to make more, or you're actually constantly on this consistent hamster wheel. So no one knows what a full book is, right? So your math, if you guys wanted to be able to figure this out, it is the actual number of hours you work per week. So the example here will be 36 hours. The average time of service is 60 minutes. So 36 hours times 60 minutes per hour is your average service time. The example goes 36 hours times the 60 minutes. That equals 2,160 of 60 minutes. It equals 36 available 60-minute time slots. 36 slots times 5 weeks equals 180 available 60-minute time slots. 180 individual services or 90 cut and color services done every 5 weeks. Now, the simple beauty of math is something that, again, and this is such a cliche thing to say, and something that people say all the time, but numbers do not lie. And the greatest thing about humans is that we carry emotions and we attach emotion to things, and things become more loving or they become more passionate because we are humans. However, what I love working with anything to do with numbers is that is the truth, and that is the hard reality of how to be able to move and function. And then as a human being able to apply that emotion inside of it. But the numbers are just going to sit there and tell us the truth no matter what. And we can't really debate it or argue it because the numbers is what it is. So if we went into the first simple beauty, which is the 150, that would be 150 clients at $150 average per ticket. Now, again, I'm getting that $150 average per ticket from what the public thinks of us. I'm also pulling some of that from our own industry, like survey companies like from PBA and different things like that. But just even to go back to the beginning of this, Google gave us what the average service dollar amount was for cut and color, and so did Meta. So 150 clients at $150 average per ticket. That would be, if we would multiply those two things together, that would be $22,500. I'm going to check something real quick. Okay. I was just seeing if anybody had any questions for right now. 150 clients times $150, that's $22,500. My screen is frozen again. 22,500 times 10 appointments a year. If we see them in a 5-week rotation, that's $2,225,000 in services a year. Now, 225,000 times a commission rate, and I'm just ballparking here at 0.42%. That's $94,000 a year take home without any tips or any of your retail if your salon offers a retail commission or that retail commission going into an education fund. So 94,000 a year is what you would take home. That is knowing what your client count is, what their services are, cut and color, and making sure that they're in a 5-week rotation. Now let's do that same math at a 6 to 8-week rotation. So if you had 150 clients times $150 a service, that would be 2,250, 22,500. 22,500 times 8.5 is 191,250. Take home on that would be 80,325. Now, if we go back to what we were saying, that if we would have gotten those people in 5 weeks, which we know that hair grows out in 5 weeks, hair grows out fast, color grows out fast. If we could just move people up a week, that would actually earn a stylist and a designer from an ethical place that would earn them an extra $14,000 to $15,000 a year. just by moving people up a week, scheduling clients once a week earlier than what we've been taught. If you move people up a week, one of the most common things that I hear in salons all the time is that whenever I ask them about what do your conversations sound like with your clients, I would say about 60, 70% of those designers sit there and tell me, well, a lot of those conversations, which can tend to be great, but we have the same frustrating conversations, the same struggles about what they are facing about their hair, the same conversations and the frustrating things that they're still using, like Prel and Dove and whatever retail products that they're using after they just got a $200 service. Whenever you can actually get more time with people, you actually build more loyalty and you build more trust in those relationships. Loyalty and trust, when those are built out of that relationship in a professional environment, the level not only of the trust and the loyalty goes up, but whenever the trust and the loyalty goes up, money and currency exchange actually increases. And again, all of that trust and all of that loyalty, whenever you're seeing people more and having different conversations with them about actually what the best things are for their hair, you're actually talking about what's best for them. And the conversations are becoming better instead of more frustrating. It's crazy to me that people sometimes only see some people once every 10 to 12 weeks. And normally, whenever those people come in, all they do is bitch and complain about all the problems that have been going on with their hair in that 10-week gap. If we could move people up more, that relationship and that conversation becomes completely different. Now, let's take the math and add on qualified services. Instead of saying add on, let's just start saying qualified service. I know that Ashley is not a big fan of when people say add ons. Um, it just almost kind of makes you sound like a windshield repair company. It makes you sound like a tire shop. It makes you sound like all these other places that we have to go into and experience as consumers all the time. And we're like, oh my gosh, all I want to do is go in and get this one thing fixed. But these people are just going to keep adding on and adding on and adding on and making me think that I believe this. Now, in sales, I've always believed that a qualified, and the term is qualified lead. A qualified lead is when somebody is looking for the service that you provide. And as they were searching for that service, that qualified lead came to you because they were already interested in it. And it actually drew that consumer actually to you and to the service that you provide. So if we can start using these as the term qualified service, I believe the luxury language of that just sits a lot better because, and I've heard Ashley say this a long time ago, and it's always stuck with me and it's always resonated with me. When a client comes in and they get back to the bowl, as soon as the hairstylist gets into that hair, before they go rinsing it out, before they start wetting the hair, before they start shampooing and conditioning, that designer knows exactly what that hair needs, what it's not actually getting, knows that there are back bar treatments, that there are scalp treatments, things that are inside of that salon that could actually benefit that guest. But for whatever reason, some reason, somehow, we stop offering those things. And it's actually not even something that the guest, we just know it by sight. And it's always been really interesting to me because hairstylists work from an ethical standpoint. And the most ethical thing that you could ever be for somebody is to offer things ethically for them that will help them, that will benefit them and their lifestyle, benefit the fact that they're having these frustrations, that they're having these challenges. And if we do not bring that up, we start chipping away at that ethical component of our business. And it's only our job to recommend what's there for them. It's the consumer's job to be able to choose it. So let's just say half of these guests get a qualified service at an average cost of $15. So that's 75 clients at a qualified service. 75 times $15. So $75 is half, or $75. 75 is recognizing that that is half of the 150 clients. So 75 clients times $15 equals $1,125 in qualified services add-ons. 1,125 times 10 visits over that amount of time throughout that year, that equals $11,250. 11,250 on top of the already $225,000 in service total. That equals out to $236,250 in service sales. 11,250 times 42%. That is almost a $5,000 earned bonus that you gave yourself utilizing only half of your 150 clients. And it's probably a bold statement, but I will say this, that is actually shooting low at that ballpark, because I actually believe that out of that 150 clients, probably 150 of them need a deep conditioning mask or some type of scalp treatment or something else that that salon offers. So 236,250 times 0.42, that is $99,225 in take home. Now that's when it's always been really interesting to me when people start talking about, hey, do you make six figures? I actually really had to start diving into that more, because when I would ask people that, people are like, yeah, I do six figures. They were actually talking about what they do in services, not about what they're actually bringing home. So to be able to make six figures in this industry, this math is so simple of how many clients you need to see, what the average ticket needs to be, and how you get to see them in that 5 week rotation. And if you would do it just based off of this, 236,250 times 42%, it's almost $100,000 in take home, and that's before tips and retail. And if you would actually factor in the tips and the retail, that would be, I would imagine, maybe $101,000, if not $100,000, right? So 150 clients at $150 average service ticket in a 5 week rotation earns you almost six figures in service commission alone. Remember, again, that is all without retail, sales, commission, and tips. This is a basic standard for a six-figure salary. And I hope, as I'm going through this, I'm like, man, I hope that everybody on the other side of this is that it's registering with them, because sometimes whenever I go to explain it, it is so easy. And then I think sometimes I get in my own head and I'm like, man, is what I'm actually saying to somebody, is it valuable to them? Because it is so simple. And I can't understand why more people aren't drawn to it. So then I get in my own head, think, hey, well, maybe it's just too simple. Maybe people think I'm just giving them boring information. Again, though, when I've worked with people who have wanted to work inside of this, and we went in and we tweaked these things and really dove in deep, the acceleration of people's productivity, but what their financial outcome looked like after a year of doing that by compounding all of these things, it was a significant difference than what they were doing before. And anybody, and I can say this pridefully and proudly, anybody that I've actually have gone through this with, when they've committed to it, still work this same exact way, and they've never looked back in this industry, and they've increased not only service sales but retail sales, qualified service sales. They've been able to increase those year over year. And if they haven't increased, they've stayed the same, because that was their sweet spot of I wanted to work 4 days. I needed to be able to get 180 clients in. These are the services I needed to do. This is the retail I needed to sell. This is everything I needed to accomplish to be able to make and earn the money that I want to keep making. So the second simple beauty is the 180. The 180 is 180 clients at a $180 average ticket. So if you would see 180 clients at a $180 average ticket, that is 32,400. If those people come in a 5 week rotation, 32,400 times 10, that is $324,000. $324,000 times a 45% commission rate. Because if I was a commission hairstylist working in a salon, and if I was doing $324,000 alone in service sales, I'm at least going to be negotiating out a 45% commission off of that. That is 1,000 or $145,800. Again, that is no retail commission, and that is no tips that go throughout that year. The third simple beauty is the 200. And this is, I've always said that if I was in the industry, and if I was not in the industry, but if I was behind the chair in the industry, based off of what they told me that the full client book would be in a 5 week rotation would be 256. Because 256, when I hear it, it makes sense, but it also seems like a lot to me. I would always be thinking, well, if I could narrow that down and I could actually have 200 clients and I own those clients. I own them in that they're getting a cut and color, they're getting a qualified service. They are also going home with 2 to 3 to 4 products every single time. That would be my sweet and my magical spot, that I would want to be doing behind the chair. Because whenever the math on that comes up, you have 200 clients at a $200 average ticket. Whenever we apply the math to that, 200 times $200 is $40,000. 40,000 times 10, the 10 signifies and represents that we're seeing them in a 5 week rotation, not 6 to 8 weeks. That is $400,000. 400,000 times 0.48, because that's what somebody should be getting paid if they are in a commission salon. That's $192,000 a year. That is no retail commission and no tips. I got to go back to that slide. To me, and I'm actually going to go into the group chat just real quick. To me, that is so wild that that's not how everybody is working. And again, with people that I've worked with in the past, there are people that are doing these dollar amounts as we speak. And those are people that I worked really hardcore on this with. However, there have been people that I've been presented this to that are not working this way. And for you to actually really be able to master something, you have to commit to it. And whenever you commit to it, that's actually whenever you're going to start seeing all the results that you want to be able to see. But I mean, again, to go back to that, thing's not working again. 200 clients at $200 a ticket, $40,000. $40,000, seeing them 10 times a year in a 5 week rotation is $400,000 in services. 400,000 times 0.48, it's $192,000 a year. Again, and sorry I'm so repetitive on it, but I have to keep repeating it because I think it's so important. That is no retail commission, that is no tips, that is just services alone. So opportunities for qualified services that happen in a salon, you have gloss, you have conditioning treatments, you have retail, you have eyebrows. Now, the place that I always go to first are eyebrows. And I've always loved talking about eyebrows for the simple fact, my whole career, I've never sold anything that has to do with wax, that has to do with the sticks, that has to do with the things that you rip off. And whenever you look at that, in a salon cost and the margin on all of those things, that margin is so high because the cost of being able to offer anything with waxing, with lips or eyebrows, nostrils, anything like that, the cost is so low to the salon. And when I started being coached and mentored on all the different things that happen in the salon and where they can actually be able to increase money and increase profitability, that's where I was taught to actually really be able to go, because it is one of the most underutilized segments of any salon, or it's one of the most underutilized segments of any hairstylist. 9 out of 10 times, whenever I have the conversation about anything that's going on with the salon. So there are two types of people in the world. There are people that get their brows done, and then there's that lady. The lady or the people who need to get their brows done. And the thing that I've always enjoyed and that I want to be able to give to you guys today, what I love about marketing and doing anything in salons is that we can make things up and we can make them really fun for the salon, the hairstylist, but we can also get a lot of consumer engagement from it. So whenever we've kicked off anything that had to do with eyebrows in a salon, of we're going to focus on this, we're going to gain client traction with this, we're going to get people engaged. Let's go ahead and just say, hey, at Fringe Salon and Color Bar this month in January, it is National Eyebrow Month. And what happens in National Eyebrow Month is that every single person is going to get an eyebrow wax or an eyebrow arch. Everybody is going to get that service. Now, a lot of where this came from is whenever I was taught this and I would go to ask hairstylist, I would say, hey, out of your clientele, if you have 150 people on your book, how many of those people do you actually do their eyebrows? Most people would come back and only say that, or if I asked it if they had 120 clients, they would come back and say that they did about 10%. I just always thought that that was so wild, because most salons are offering that service from anywhere from 20 to $25. And, that's a great qualified service add-on to be able to put onto something. And I've always just wondered, well, everybody, I get my eyebrows done. And what was great about whenever the person who started doing my eyebrows, they never asked me if I wanted to get my eyebrows done. It was always just one thing that she did. She would look directly, not my eyes, but she would look at my eyebrows and she'd be like, we need to do your eyebrows today. And I would sit there and be like, okay. There was never even a doubt about it. I was like, okay, do what you need to do. And again, that service is so underutilized by hairstylists and also by salons that we could really engage clients, because if people are getting their eyebrows done, they're not getting them done by you, right? Or some are. There's 120 clients, maybe 12 of them are. But a lot of people just don't even know that the service is available. And then there's just some people who nobody's ever been bold enough from an ethical and professional standpoint to say, hey, we need to get your eyebrows done today because you got a unibrow going. So let's do some math. If the designer has 120 clients and they do 10% of that clientele's brows, they will do 12 people in a 6 to 8 week rotation. If the average service is $20, this is the breakdown. 12 clients at $20 equals 240. 240 times an 8.5 year rotation. That's $2,040 for the year that they would do in eyebrow services. 2,040 times 42%, that's $850 a year. Now, if you had 120 clients, and if we could look at this differently and we could dream differently, and through a great consumer salon engagement, salon to consumer engagement, where we could actually introduce this service as a complimentary service for the first time, and also pay back the existing people who have been getting their eyebrow arches and waxes from us the whole time, and just say, hey, this is a thank you. We're just giving out a complimentary eyebrow arch or wax to everybody. We stay committed to the guest. We stay committed to the qualified service, and we capture 60 of the 120 for that one designer, if we capture 60 of those clients, that's half of the base. The math is 60 clients times $20 equals $1,200. $1,200 times 10, that is $12,000 alone just in eyebrow services. $12,000 times 0.42% commission to the designer. That is an extra $5,000 a year. And I was doing some math last night with Ashley, and I had asked her, I said, Ash, what do you think the normal average car note is nowadays? And I actually said 360. And she was like, no way, no way. It's got to at least be 410. So if you look at 410 times 12 paying for a car, that's $4,920. Just by doing, if somebody had 120 clients, just by doing 60 of them, and doing their eyebrow arches, which can be done at the bowl while they're actually getting a conditioning treatment, can all be done at the bowl or color process, whatever it is, that you can actually earn enough money to be able to pay off your car note and not even take out of the money of what you're earning just on the cut and color services alone that you're doing. The opportunities that sit in salon, especially whenever you're going into these slower times like January and July, June and July, all of those different things. Like, I believe that all this stuff should be working no matter what all the time. However, as we're getting ready to embark into January, can we do a National Eyebrow Month in the salon? How many guests are we seeing per stylist? How many guests does the stylist actually have to be considered full? Do they think that they're full? Do they feel that they're full, or are they actually full? Do the numbers and the math actually attach to what the reality and the truth is? We have to put pen and paper and we have to put numbers to be able to provide us the truth, not the feeling, not the emotion of what we are doing, what we are currently doing, what we want to achieve, and how deep we actually want to be able to take this. An extra $5,000 in take home is in a simple 10-minute service. So that is pretty much that for what we have. Ashley and I, we are always really, really big on what retail does for any salon, what it does for any hairstylist at any time. If there are hairstylists on this call, please know that we will always sit there and say that retail is one of the most important elements to any salon business, because that gives not the salon owner, but it gives the salon. The salon owner and the salon are two different entities. The salon owner works for the salon. The highest profit margin that sits in a salon sits in retail. So whenever you look at destination education, whenever you just look at shit, water, electric, all the things that it takes to actually keep a salon running, all of those dollars that are generated in retail go to those things. And other than that, the most important thing is that retail is the most important for the guest. If you want that look, and if you want them to look and feel beautiful and confident and have self-esteem, and bottle that up as much as possible, it is so important for them not only to be able to use the products that you use in a salon, but for them to be able to use the products to be able to recreate that look. And I think that this would also be awesome. And I've been saying this over the last 6 months with salon owners. Nobody's done it, and I would love for somebody to do it. Is that if you guys have an opportunity, I just even go Vistaprint or something like that, but I would get some stickers that say that go in your font, go in your design, and let's say that it says the main label salon. But every single product that goes out that door would be stickered to go into every single bathroom that's sold for every single guest that's there. I think one of the strongest marketing things that you could ever do is have your client be reminded of who their hairstylist is every single day. And if the first thing that your guest does every single day is shampoo and condition their hair, and they're using not only your product, but it has a sticker that has your salon on it, shit, if it was me, it would be a sticker of my face going like this in their shower. So they were reminded of me when they shampooed and conditioned, when they prepped, styled, and finished. And by the time that they even hit the kitchen to even make breakfast, they had thought about me 5 or 6 times by the time that they even make breakfast. And I believe that one of the best ways to actually increase those retail service sales, and Ashley and I believe this, Fuse believes this, is to be able to every single guest, every single time, every guest, every 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 time, even the ones that say no every time. You take up the 3 to 4 products that you used on them that day, and you say, if you want your hair to look the same tomorrow as it does today, this is what I recommend. It's my job to tell you about them. It's your job to choose them. I'll see you in 5 weeks. Receptionist schedules it, and you walk away. If those products go up there, and if there's 3 to 4 of them up there, the law of averages states through consumer behavior that if there's 3 to 4 products up there, that there's about a 96% chance that those people are going home with one product. So if you guys want to be able to increase some things, I hope that all this stuff worked, that you got value from it. It is really basic. It is really simple. Besides like a couple of animated things that happened in this PowerPoint, the PowerPoint was probably really boring. But these are straight to the point things that you or people inside of your business can actually start increasing and accelerating their income in slow months, but also every single month. And I would challenge all of you in a polite challenge, if you can. And I know that we'll probably have to take some questions on it, on how to do it and all those different things. Start moving people up. Get 6 to 8 weeks out of the company philosophy, out of the salon philosophy, and start seeing people in 4 to 5 weeks and start getting those average tickets up. Ash, can you get on here now?
Yes.
Do you have anything that you would like to add?
I think the only thing that might be relevant or helpful for anyone in regard to those numbers that you and I had talked about that I don't know if you touched on, or I don't think that you touched on, um,
Mm-hmm.
is just what this looks like for someone that is, let's say specializing in lived-in services, and they want to get their clients to a 5-week rotation. How best could they accomplish that if that client, the whole point of that service that a lot of hairstylists have built their business around is to have this sort of rooted look so that they don't have to come in to the salon so often for color. So, what do you suggest, or do you want to suggest something for those services to still see those clients? Because their haircut is growing out, their color is growing out, like the toner's faded off by the time that they come in, right? So any suggestions with that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I was not paying attention. I
Oh,
was catching up on I was
okay.
catching up on it's crazy to me that I'm on a Zoom and people are texting me while I'm presenting on the Zoom.
Yeah. So one
Not
of
anybody who is trying to get in, but I'm saying like people that like you, Samantha, were texting me while I'm on the Zoom. So I'm trying to catch up on messages. So ask that again.
Well, it's just going back to the conversation where we were talking about the lived-in hair color, and you've got people who want to come into if you are a stylist who, let's say, your whole career has been spent on lived-in hair color and on increasing the amount of time clients can be out of the salon, how do you then approach this 5 week rotation and start conditioning clients to come in on a frequency like that if the whole thing that your business was built on, because this is all that we've seen over Instagram for the last 5 years, how do we implement a 5 week rotation in a culture that has decided that our goal is to make sure that clients can stay out of the salon for as long as possible?
So a lot of my discoveries come from my questions to hairstylists and knowing exactly what the answer is. So I'm just going to do that with you because you're a hairstylist. Um, and this is me being curious because I'm trying to come up with a solution and an answer for it. So you have a lived-in color and that's stretched out 10 weeks, right? Ashley, what's that person's hair like after that 10 weeks?
It's usually faded, lacking condition. It's not necessarily an issue with like the top of their hair is like in desperate need to be done, except that it's going to look nicer once they get it done. But it's always faded. It's always usually more dry, even if they're using good hair care, just because the toning and glazing services make it feel good. And not as shiny, like all of that kind of stuff. It just looks undone.
So it sounds like it would be fair to say that um, they would probably need something that is not a retail component that they could actually do at home. That if you got to see them in 4 to 5 weeks, it would benefit them instead of them going 10 weeks without a deep conditioning mask or a scalp treatment. Is that fair?
Yeah. So just conditioning them to come in for something else.
So
And
they could do that. And then my next question would be is now whenever you do this lived in color look, and this is me asking because I really don't know, does lived in color means no hair cutting?
no, but some of the lived in people are definitely stretching their haircuts. You're looking at longer hair. They're going to say, well, I don't need a haircut in 5 weeks because the hairdresser is going to cut all my hair off or cut too much hair off anyway. So I don't want to come in 5 weeks. I know this feeling. It's giving me anxiety right now. So if you're a long
I
haired person, you don't want to get your hair cut every 5 weeks.
so this is just through my experience. Anytime that I've been around any female, and if they said that they had not, and if they found out that I was in the hair industry and I got stuck in a conversation with somebody who's we're at a function and they're like, "So what do you think about my hair?" And I'm like, I don't know, and I don't want to get into it. The first thing that they'll always do is almost go down like this with these two fingers and always show the ends and be like, "I need a trim." Or I need some kind of cut. I don't know how that looks in your guys' world, but for my world, I would be sitting there thinking, well, 10 weeks is a long time. And if people, and Ash, I'll ask you this, if somebody goes 10 weeks and they got the lived in color, but they got the cut, I mean, can they get split ends in 5 weeks?
Well, 100%.
Well,
100%.
it's a real, I'm just asking. So it sounds like, and it seems like it would make sense to get somebody in between that to be able to do that. At least you're actually getting somebody else to come in. And I don't know, what that cost of a trim would look like, but the cost of a trim and then a qualified service of a deep conditioning treatment or something so that their hair is healthy until they come back in another 5 weeks would actually make more sense. And probably in that amount of time, this is what scares me about people that go on a 10-week rotation too, or that go out further than that, is sometimes because they're in Target more or they're at the mall more, if they run out of product, they will get what is convenient there versus actually getting the things, not that you want to sell them, but you know what is actually best and you have a controlled environment of what your finished product looks like. So I don't know, can people run out of product in 5 weeks?
Well,
I can.
they'll definitely run out of it in 10. There are a couple of other questions. It makes me think about like long hair, like Jill mentioned, long hair people would freak. Becca asked if you would charge full price, which I want you to answer in just a second. one of the things that comes up for me, even when I'm thinking about additional services, and this is something that we talk to our team about, like you can turn a client right now into a whole new client if you have one of those lived in people and you're trying to get a person in for 10 services a year. Because that's the whole thing is it's not really, do you have to do the same services all 10 appointments? Not necessarily. If it's a single process color, maybe, but can you get that person in 10 times throughout that year? Maybe they're coming in for a smoothing treatment. Maybe they're coming in for whatever, and you're spacing those things out every 5 weeks where they're not coming in for the exact same service. Maybe they come in for a gloss. Maybe they come in for whatever it is. Maybe they come in for a treatment and a blowout because they don't necessarily need a haircut, or psychologically, they don't want a haircut if they've got long hair. So maybe it shows up in those ways where it it's a little bit different. So Becca had asked, would you charge full price? Any thoughts on that?
Full price. So I don't know if this is the best accurate answer. I'm just being honest with everybody here. Um, as you were talking, what I was thinking about, have you ever heard of Ashley a male maintenance program?
Yes.
Right. So what's a male maintenance program?
Like where they're coming in to get their neck trims and all of those touch-up services?
Right. So a lot of people include that in the first initial price, right? So if they're seeing their male guest every 4 weeks, but they offer this thing in 2 weeks, so instead of charging them $60 for their haircut, they go up another $20, right? And that one-time haircut or that haircut um, is $80, but they come back in 2 weeks and they get all of that stuff that bothers men, the hair going over the ears. They, trim all that stuff up, get all the neck hair, um, eyebrows, right? That was always one of the coolest things. And that I still get is that I'm always scheduled to go back in because my eyebrows grow like crazy. It is the only place on I'm losing my hair on my head, but my eyebrows. If I could just transplant my eyebrow hair up to here, I'd have a full head of hair. But so, Kelly goes in and she trims the eyebrows, if I'm drawn out like that. Um, so could it be something that is done in the initial pricing of saying, hey, this is what this cost is, but it's not the full amount? Or I do know that male maintenance care programs, if they do not charge it initially um, at the time of the haircut, they will sit there and say, okay, it's a $60 cut. If you come back in 2 weeks and we do this, you pay $20.
That's actually really interesting. The having a possibility of either raising the price for the whole overall service, and then they have a complimentary. It kind of goes back to like my cosmetology school days where the neck trims were always complimentary for the men or fringe trims
Mm-hmm.
for the women. But that's really interesting if that's already added into the price. But Becca, even to your question about if you would charge the same price, you could have some type of package for that in between service if you wanted to, as long as it was weighted, like basically on the time or the overall composite cost of whatever your aim was for your average ticket. Because if you get one client to pay, so if the average ticket is $200 and you're going to see them 10 times, that's $2,000 a client per year, right? So if the overall composite cost equaled, if your target was 200, if it equaled $2,000 for the year, it doesn't matter how the client pays for those services. It would be $2,000 for the year. So it's actually pretty interesting. You could almost just package that up for the year. Here, $2,000 all inclusive for the year for these services. Jill said a lot of interesting stuff about things that they do over in the UK. And she mentioned she wasn't sure if it was the same, but I think there was actually a platform artist that I heard who advocated for a service that she called a trim, treat, and tone. So in between her balayage services, she would do a cut, a treatment, and a toner. And that was the mid service. And so it's very similar to what you're talking about, Jill, over in the UK. So I'm going to read this off to you, Tim. Becca said, so currently my haircuts are 125 and my toners are scheduled every 6 weeks. So my client comes back in 6 weeks and asks for a trim, like even her face frame. I only charge them 65 for ends, and if I touch the face frame, 75. What are your thoughts?
I'm gonna leave that to you. I know that you're a master being able to figure those things out and do the math on them and how it works structurally inside of a salon for a salon owner.
Yeah. I I think this would just it would again it would just go back to what's the overall target for the whole of the client and possibly moving this to every 5 weeks. So having that 10-week cycle and then having them on a 5 week cycle for exactly what you're talking about, Becca, and then maybe you have it be a lesser cost, but it's all rolled into the overall. So you're looking at what's the target cost over that 10-week time period is for the client to have spent a total of X amount of dollars. And then you could have it feel like it was a lesser expense when they come in for that mid appointment, because that's going to sometimes encourage them to come in more, or just roll it all into the 10-week appointment. And then we always schedule the mid appointment, and that appointment is a quote unquote complimentary, but in reality, they already paid for it. And that may encourage more people to join, but that would be overall raising the original cost of the service. So there's, I think, a lot of different ways that you could do it. I think as long as the 75, 65, or $75 allows you to stay in what your target average ticket is, it doesn't matter how you break it down. It's just do what gets your clients excited promotionally, that keeps you in your target, but just make sure you know your numbers. Like, how much per client per year do I want to be making, and how many times are they going to be coming in? Anything else on that, Tim?
No,
Okay. I think those, oh, wait. She said they do feel better when she says that she won't charge full price, but she also lets them know why it's lower. So I think even just positioning it like it's not a discount, this is an additional service we offer to our full service clients, right? So it's not, we don't give you a discount for coming back. We give you an extra added benefit for the loyalty that you give us, coming in and allowing us to keep your hair looking fresh instead of frightening when you extend it for 10 to 12 weeks and we don't see you. So all of that, I mean, I think is you're already spot on with that. That's all I got.
Ash, how do you think it went?
I don't know. How do you guys think it went? Put your response in the chat. It
Hey
was.
Becca, we recorded everything, so anything that you missed, you'll have access to it. And we said that in the beginning too. You'll have access for this forever. So as you go on to, if you want to share this with anybody in the salon, or as you go on to onboard new designers and new guests, just giving them something to actually have some type of system and fundamental path, I guess you could say, a pathway for a career on something that's just easy and simple and that I think anybody can understand.
100%. And if you take Tim's math that he does over and over throughout the presentation, where it's just the number of people and the amount that those people are spending on a 5 week rotation, it's you can break that backwards where you literally choose like what is that number? What's that service total? So you can ensure you know how much is it that you really need to be at, so that once you know those numbers, you can hit big numbers like that. But the number one thing that Tim even talked about at the beginning is most people don't know their number. They don't know the number and they don't know their numbers. So the closer you can get to that, to understand that, the better off that you're going to be. Jill said she
Ash,
has lots of notes and a plan of action.
Ash is a hairstylist and as a salon owner. Whenever it's just coming into like cutting like single processes and stuff like that, things that can be done in a very efficient manner of time. Does it give you the tight cheeks whenever I say get rid of 6 to 8 weeks and start focusing on 5?
No. I think for some people, 6 to 8 weeks, I mean, it's on signs that some companies put out there. It's the thing that we learned right in the beginning. I can remember in cosmetology school someone talking about like haircuts are 6 weeks, haircuts and hair color were 6 weeks, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and then highlights were 8 weeks. Like it was always so specific, and this definitely pushes it because frequency at the end of the day, the higher the frequency, even if you move a balayage client from 12 weeks to 10 weeks, like that is, you're moving
Significant.
yourself to have less people to deal with. And you detailed that. Like it is less conversations, it's less stress, it's less a lot of things. But at the end of the day, it's also less work overall because it's less people that you're having to like grab. And because people talk about empty space, because people talk about empty books, we're always trying to think about how can we recruit a new client? How can we retain these clients when we have clients who are already sitting in our chair that we
Yeah.
could be doing more with already right now if we just know the right stuff to do. And I don't think it's been natural to think about what can we do with our current clients that's different than what we're doing right now that will raise those service sales, raise all of the other factors that contribute to our financial health. And then we can, if we need to build clientele, then yes, build clientele. But every time we build a new client, we actually build it in a more expansive way than what we're doing when we're sort of just crap shooting through all of the new clients and praying for the next one to sit in our chair.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sometimes people would never have to make another Instagram post and they could triple their business over 30 days.
And in a lot of cases, that absolutely can
Seriously.
be.
Double it.
So I do want to share one thing, and this is just giving you a shout out so that everybody understands what this has looked like. This is real life in my business. This was happened either right before we started Fuse or right around. Tim and I had worked together for a long time before Fuse was ever started. And so one of the things that I had a girl in my salon she lived 2 hours away from the salon. And I remember when I interviewed her, she was so certain that she wanted to work at the salon, but she lived that far away. And I told her, I was like, that is way, way, way too far. Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to do that for a long period of time because Houston's got horrendous traffic. And so she was so certain that she wanted to work with me. She knew a couple of people who worked with us. She was so certain that she wanted to work there that she convinced me that it was going to all be fine. So it was within, I think, 2 years. She was crying every single day, wanting to work less days, but she was also one of those rare stylists who was very money driven. And so she wanted to make a lot of money. And we had gotten her to a place, I set a target for her to be able to start removing some days because ultimately, once you start removing days, you make it harder for yourself to build. The more available that you are, the easier and faster you can build, and then it's always easy to condense and cut down. But when you're trying to build, only giving people 2 to 3 days a week to build two, clients get frustrated because they want to come in when they want to come in when they first meet you, right? They don't want to come in when you want them to come in when you have no business or they don't know how good you are. So I had worked with her for several years on trying to do this, and we'd made some ground. And she was to about, I think her average ticket at that point in time was about $169, which she had like a maybe a $70 haircut to put that in perspective. And so what happened is we'd spent about 3 years and she'd cut out one day and she'd gotten her average ticket to where she was doing about $12,000 a month in service sales. And she ultimately, we were trying to get her higher because she wanted to cut down to, she wanted to eventually just work 2 days a week. So Tim was in town doing some work with the manufacturer that we work with. So this was before Fuse. And I said, hey, can you just talk to her and see if you can break through? Because she was super frustrated and she couldn't get to that next level to be able to build the business she needed to step back more. He had a conversation, showed her these numbers, and they figured out what her exact client count was and what her exact number was per client and mapped it out, and then mapped out what is the exact like service mapping that I'm going to do in order to get to those numbers. And I think within 3 or 4 months, she had raised her average ticket to like 225. And then by the end of it, she just kept on that roll. By the end of it, she was with me for about 10 years. And at the end, she had her average ticket was about $369. And she was just doing this same system over and over and over. Like, just how can I get even more out of it? And I mean, she had a day, we went crazy because she had a day that was about $4,800 just in one day. And she did do some extensions, but she also did a lot of hair color, and she just was super smart. She did a lot of smoothing treatments and all of that stuff. But it was because she was mapping this out strategically to get to where her goals were. And ultimately, she was a six-figure hairdresser working 2 days a week behind the chair. And that was all because of that conversation that they had, doing the same exact math and getting themselves exactly to where, or getting herself exactly to where she wanted to be. So it was really, really incredible. I'm going to get Tim back on here. Just give me 1 second. He accidentally moved himself out. So there we go. All right.
So
So
sorry, the library people came in. The important thing about Haley, you guys want to talk about one of the toughest, one of the sweetest, nicest people on the planet, but a resistor and a tough person, a tough nut to crack. She was definitely tough, but she really attached to this by the end. And I believe that this is what she's still currently doing. Her average service or her average ticket is what, $367 average service ticket?
it was 369 whenever
Yeah.
the last time that we ran it before she ultimately parted ways with the company.
Had what was her rebook?
Oh,
Wasn't it?
like 98%,
Yeah.
like consistently, like for the whole year, like 97, 98%.
Yeah. It was wild. It was great to see for sure.
Yep.
The library